Well, hello and welcome to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, and today is a special flight for a number of reasons. Number one, we'll be flying from Heathrow International to Frankfurt Airport, and number two, we'll be discussing in bits and pieces everything about taking off the plane from the ground, flying it through to the destination airport, arriving at the airport and landing via an ILS landing, and all the things that you should know. It's not actually a tutorial, but basically I'll be explaining what I'm doing. The third thing especially is this is a night flight, so you'll be enjoying the night view of all the London and the Frankfurt. So let's start planning our flight. So we'll be flying Airbus A320neo, and this is a fly-by-wire mod, and we'll be using the Microsoft library that they've recently released in their recent update. There are quite a few by fly-by-wire, but we'll be using the latest one from Microsoft. And let's enter now the Heathrow airport code, which is EGLL, and in the destination airport let's enter EDDF, that is the code for Frankfurt airport, and this is a reasonable flight of approximately an hour, but let's set up the flight first. So this will be in low altitude airways flight, so that means our maximum cruise altitude might be somewhere around 24,000 feet, and we want to do a cold and dark start. Okay, so we don't want to start on the runway. Right now this is showing the plane at 27 right runway, but we don't want that. We want to start from scratch. So for that we need to select a parking gate. So let's click on the nearest parking gate and select it, set as departure, and this is a very annoying. It zooms out every time and you have to zoom back in. I don't know why. That should be fixed. And now another thing, now we'll be starting from this gate, and another thing is currently the plane is taking a very sharp angle right after taking off. It's making a very sharp right turn, which isn't good because plane will be overshooting anyways. Plane cannot turn this sharp. So let's click on departures, and for the runway 27 right, let's select so this now leads to a reasonable number of evenly spaced waypoints, so that we have resolved there. Now let's go to our destination airport, which is Frankfurt, and here again you see we are landing on 25C runway, but the angle is quite sharp. That is practically impossible for any of the plane to land in that way. So since we want to do an ILS landing, so let's click on approach and look for ILS 25C. So there it is. Let's click on it, and this now gives us a reasonable number of evenly spaced waypoints. So this now flight is approximately just under 1 hour, about 380 nautical miles, approximately 400 nautical miles. So now let's look at the navigation log, and as you can see the cruise altitude is 23,000 feet. So that's the maximum altitude that we'll be reaching. Now this is important that at the Rapex waypoint we'll be reaching our maximum cruise altitude. We'll be climbing up all these till Rapex, and after flying through a number of waypoints at Gapso is the point where we'll be starting our descent. So you need to keep this in mind because ATC may or may not tell you. So up until Red Go we have to be at 4,000 feet. So you can see between MTL and Red Go there's a steep descent. So from 15,000 16,000 feet to 4,000, that isn't practically possible to have such a steep descent, or climb even for that matter. So we have to descend gradually from Gapso to the Red Go. So we have to descend until Red Go, and at 4,000 feet we'll be able to capture the glide slope, which will enable our plane to do an ILS landing on our desired runway, which was 25C on the Frankfurt airport. So these are important points that you need to keep in mind. And let's now set up the weather. We want clear skies, and for the time of the day we want to start somewhere between 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. So our flight will start and end at during the night time. Yeah, so that's there. This is a decent flight of 55 minutes, approximately 380 nautical miles, with our plane departure and arrival airport setup and our weather and daytime conditions setup. Let's now click on fly. So here we are. It's pitch black, you can't see anything, and this is a feature. I'm not sure whether this is default, or is it only in fly-by-wire mode, but this gives you kind of a headlight where you can see the panel. So currently it's totally off. The radio ATC is also off because nothing is running at the moment. So before turning on anything, if you click on the batteries and the external power, all this, the headlight will go away. So you will be in pitch black and you won't be able to see these knobs to increase or decrease the brightness. So what I'm doing it ahead of time before I'm turning on anything. This will have effect only when the plane turns on, but these are important knobs to improve the glare shield brightness, because this will kind of throw on a spotlight on all these panels that are located around thrust lever and on the main around the main displays. So I'm doing these setups ahead of time. You can hear the vehicles driving outside, and that's the final setup that we have. And here on the overhead display panel, we need to improve the sub panel brightness, and then we are ready to click on the batteries. Yeah, I think everything is set up. I'm not forgetting anything. And let's now click on batteries. As soon as you turn on the batteries, everything goes not so dark, because we had worked on these,
Heathrow clearance delivery PA 125 IFR to Frankfurt, ready to copy.
So our radio is currently managed by AI, so we want to turn that off. If you leave it on, it will keep doing the thing until it reaches the pushback. So we don't want to push right now. We want to start the plane first. So as soon as you turn on the batteries, your ATC comes on.
PA 125 cleared to Frankfurt Airport is filed. Takeoff runway 27
we have to
right,
respond to ATC because it's currently manual. So currently you see all the displays are off, and we now need to turn on the external power which is available. As soon as we turn on the external power, what it does, it turns on all the displays within the plane. All the things including air conditioner, everything comes on. So let's now switch these knobs to IR, so that the plane is able to detect its location in terms of its altitude, its location where it is sitting on the ground. So this takes quite a bit of time, about 6 to 7 minutes, and so you should turn it on as soon as you turn on the plane. Now with the external power turned on, it's time to turn on the APU, the auxiliary power unit. So auxiliary power unit takes power from the external power, and when it turns on, as you can hear the sound of the APU. So as it turns on, it will provide power for the engines to start up, and when the APU is on, we won't be needing any external power. So we should switch it off after the external power, after the APU has turned on. So I turned on all the fuel pumps, and let's now wait for APU to power up and reach its maximum, by which time APU will be in a position to provide enough power for the engines to start up, and we won't be needing the APU. After the engines have turned on, we will be switching off the APU as well. So let's turn on the APU display, and you can see APU is powering up. It takes its time, couple of minutes maybe. You can hear the sound of APU powering up. So let's meanwhile take clearance for taxiing to our desired runway, where we have to take off.
Heathrow ground Pia 125 with India ready to taxi IFR.
Pia 125 taxi to then hold short of runway 27 right via taxiway
APU,
Kilo
this
Bravo
will turn to
Lima 21
available,
Alpha Alpha
the
3
APU
Alpha 2
starter,
Alpha 1.
once the
Contact
APU has
tower
fully
on
started.
118.7051
Then we'll be turning
when
on
ready.
the APU bleed. So let's acknowledge ATC.
Taxi to and hold short runway 27 right via taxiway Kilo Bravo Lima 21 Alpha Alpha 3 Alpha 2 Alpha 1 Pia 125.
I think it's about time for APU to get fully started. And the APU is available now. So let's turn on the APU bleed, and we can switch off the external power now. Since APU is running, we don't need external power. So now APU bleed is providing power to the engines, and it's time now to start the engines. So let's switch the selector mode to start, and let's turn on engine 2. And let's switch on the engine display. So the bottom panel will show you the fuel consumption, and the top one will show you the progress of the engine, how much throttle is being added, and where the engine is during the startup procedure. You can hear the sound of engine starting up. So there you can see the taxi ribbon. So I have turned it on in the options, and this then helps you see your taxi paths from the gate to the runway, or the other way around if you're on the arrival airport. And I always find it useful in case I'm unfamiliar with the airport or where the particular runway is lying. So let's now start pushback. So either you can do it from ATC, or you can press Shift P, and you can see the pushback tug moving into position from pushing back. So we'll have to wait and have to see for a push from the pushback tug. You will notice a movement there at the glare shield, and then we'll be releasing the parking brake. So engine 1 has stabilized, so let's start the engine 2 as well while we are doing the pushback. We'll be noticing movement there. So there you see there's a slight push. Let's release parking brake, and our plane will start moving back with the help of pushback tug. So you can hear the engine 2 is also starting up. Or rather engine 1, we started engine 2 first. So we'll be doing a request for pushback to the right to line up the plane with our taxiing path. So let's do it now.
Heathrow ground Pia 125 requesting pushback tug to steer the aircraft to the right.
Pia 125, your request has been transmitted to the operator.
I think that's about the position that we want it to be, slightly more, and then you can press Shift P again to stop the pushback. Let's seconds, and immediately after stopping the pushback we need to engage the parking brakes so that plane does not start moving on its own. So we basically have to follow that taxi ribbon, which basically is over the yellow line. So let's turn on some lights: the taxi light, navigation light, strobe light, beacon light, wing lights, and let's set the no smoking to auto, and now it's time to release the parking brake and start taxiing to our runway. So as you may be aware that Flybywire mod has introduced a feature where you don't need to add throttle for your plane to move while you are taxiing, because the engines are running. That power is enough to push your plane forward, and that's what the real plane mechanic is. That's how the real plane works. Try and stay on that yellow line. So no throttle here. Plane is moving on its own, and in fact we have to be aware of when we need to apply brakes. Like we are about to have a right turn, so I'm starting to apply brakes, slow the plane down, and not to overshoot our taxi path. Brakes quite frequently to slow down around these kind of tight turns. So you'll see a yellow line where there it is. So that's the point where we have to stop and we have to take takeoff clearance. So let's now turn the AI for the ATC on. Now we don't want to manage the radios. We are done with it, and let's slightly move ahead, and let's see if the AI does it for us. So there you go.
Heathrow Tower PA 125 at runway 27 right, ready for takeoff IFR to Frankfurt.
So I'll just move my ATC on to the second monitor. I don't need it on primary monitor.
Cleared for takeoff runway 27 right.
So I just added a slight throttle to get the plane going, and the throttle is idle again. And this is the moment of truth. I just love it when the plane is getting onto the runway for taking off from the taxiway. I just love it. I love the sight of those line of white lights spread across the runway. Just look at that. That is so amazing. I just love it. It's a lovely sight. So let's get lined up with the runway and apply brakes and engage parking brake, because we want to do a couple of things before we take off. We want to prepare our plane. So let's set up our initial climb altitude, which was 10,000 feet. And let's turn on the flight directors on the both sides. And in case of rejected takeoff, we need to turn on the auto brakes. I want to set them to maximum, and I want to turn on the speed brakes. And finally, we want to set the brakes to we want to set the flaps to 1. That's it. And the one final thing about the thrust lever settings. So you have 3 settings. There is climb, there is flex, there is toga. So at toga or flex we can do the takeoff, and after we have climbed up to approximately about 1000 feet, and it's not something fixed, but after reaching a certain altitude we need to move the thrust levers to climb, so that the AI manages, the autopilot manages the thrust for the rest of the flight, and we don't need to worry about changing the altitude manually. So with all that set, we are ready for takeoff. So time to release the parking brakes. And add some thrust. Rotate. Positive rate, you're up. Let's now set the thrust lever to climb.
118.475 for Pia 125. London Center Pia 125 is climbing through 1,300
Let's engage the autopilot,
feet.
and let's set flaps to 0. I think that was a reasonable takeoff. If you're enjoying the city lights, it's like me. I see the climb speed is quite high, and let's set it up to somewhere between 2,500 feet to 3,000 feet per minute. Vertical speed, if it's too high, it's above 3,000, it puts a lot of pressure on the engines. They have to work harder, and what it does, it starts slowing your plane down. So we have to make our right turn. You see the plane now reaching 250 knots, which is a standard speed below 10,000 feet. So below 10,000 feet altitude we cannot exceed 250 knots.
Traffic is 11 o'clock 4 miles at flight level 180 generic. Report them in sight. Generic Echo Yankee Whiskey have the traffic. Airbus Echo Alpha Zulu climb and maintain flight level 300.
So you see, before the plane has started moving ahead of time, so it does not want to overshoot our flight path, and that's the beauty of fly-by-wire mod. I'm not aware of if it's there in the default A320 by the MSFS 2020. Because I've been using the fly-by-wire mod for quite some time now. So you see, this is our flight path up to Frankfurt airport, and this is the waypoint where we have to start our descent. So I'm just trying to show you. And that's where we'll be capturing our glide slope. So still an hour or so to go. Let's now move the map to our second monitor. So we are making our second right turn.
Generic Mike, Quebec Delta
please do enjoy the city lights. That's the reason I'm doing this night flight. It's quite a view. So 210, 21,000 feet. So we have been told to increase our altitude to 21,000 feet. 210. Let's now set up the vertical speed again so that we are not climbing steeply. Somewhere between 3,000 and 2,500 feet is a decent climb rate in terms of feet per minute. And one thing about the night lights is that they enable you to see your plane in the darkness. So I forgot to turn off the APU. Soon after your engines are on, we need to turn off the APU. It's not required. And above 10,000 feet, we need to turn off our landing lights. We don't need these. So it's a standard practice to keep our landing lights on up until 10,000 feet or below. And soon after climbing above 10,000 feet, we can turn off our landing lights. So you can see the colors, the shape of your plane. And just wait when we have to fly above the sea. You won't be able to see anything because there is no light in the surrounding to reflect on the plane. So I'm not sure, maybe there is some setting in the flight simulator where we can change maybe the brightness to enable us view. But for now I think that will work. So we are climbing at a very decent rate of 2,500 feet. Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 have done a spectacular job for flight simmers like me. I'm not an expert flight simmer, but I'm just a fan of flight simulation. I just love flying. If I say I just love flying plane, that won't be an exaggeration, but the fact is I'm not a real world pilot. So we have the liberty to fly a plane and almost real flight conditions, and thanks to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. The experience that you get from the simulation is unmatched, in the absence of the need for any third-party add-ons to add to realism. Microsoft has done a lot, that provided us so much. Although we have to face some bugs, and this has been the history of MSFS since its launch in August 2020. So Microsoft and Asobo Studio have worked pretty hard to address all those issues, like autopilot issues, crash to desktop, and simulation has kept on improving over time. so we are leveling off at 21,000 feet, and I'm expecting an instruction anytime. So there you go,
125 climb and maintain flight level 230.
230. So that's our final climb
Climb and maintain flight level
before we reach our
230
cruise altitude.
125.
Descend and maintain 9,000 feet. Generic Hotel Whiskey Tango.
I love this cockpit view.
Descend and maintain flight
The
level
city.
390. Generic Golf Hotel X-ray. Airbus Mike Echo Hotel contact Heathrow approach on 119.73.
So at this point, this might be harder to tell the difference between the real and the simulation.
119.73 Airbus Mike Echo
The way I see it now. Maybe you can find out the differences in the comments. Just let me know, so that we can let the SO and the Microsoft Studio know and the Flybywire team know to add to the realism. They have done a fabulous job.
To flight level 390. Generic Hotel Whiskey Tango, you are 52 miles southwest.
Flybywire has been
Speed below
working.
210
Flybywire
knots.
team
Expect ILS runway
has been
27
hard on
approach
work,
via November Whiskey India transition.
and
Cleared to November
kept on
Whiskey India.
improving this
Generic
A320neo.
Uniform Hotel Sierra, you are 800 feet above your assigned altitude. Descend and maintain flight level 320. Keep speed below 210 knots. Expect ILS runway 27 approach via November Whiskey India transition. Cleared to November Whiskey India. Generic Hotel Whiskey Tango. Generic Tango Uniform Bravo climb and maintain flight level 270. Generic Mike Quebec Delta traffic is 11 o'clock 4 miles at 8,000 feet. Generic. Report them in sight. Climb and maintain flight level 270. Generic Tango Uniform Bravo.
So there you see, there's a slight part of the city that is left now, and soon we'll be flying above the sea, and we'll try and see
Yankee Whiskey have the generic in sight.
the difference in terms of the brightness that is being reflected around the plane. It's already getting darker as the lights on the ground have decreased.
Keep speed below 210 knots. Descend and maintain 2,300 feet. Keep speed below 210 knots. Expect ILS runway 21 approach via Godwa transition. Cleared to Godwa. Generic
And who
Papa
knows, I
Tango
mean,
Zulu.
this is how the real world works. I mean, unless there is a moon in the sky, you won't be able to see your plane outside. Of course, anyway. I'm not saying it's unreal. I would just have a desire to see my plane the way I see it during the daytime. But it's fabulous. I just love it. Anyways. What are those red lights, I wonder? And you'll be seeing more of those as we move towards the sea. I don't know, do you know? Just enlighten me on these red lights.
Descend and maintain 2,100 feet. Generic Bravo Zulu Sierra.
There you go, you can see those red lights as we are approaching the sea. These are pretty much on the ground at the moment.
Generic Bravo Zulu Sierra traffic is 10 o'clock 4 miles at 5,100 feet generic. Report them in sight. Generic Victor Golf Lima after generic in sight.
So there you see, there is a part of the city on the right side that might be, that you're seeing on the right side. That is throwing in some lights, otherwise it's pitch black and white. And those are the red lights that are there in the sea. I mean, I could turn the time to a daytime where we could see what these are, but I just don't want to spoil the fun. It's a nighttime flight.
Descend and maintain flight level 270 Airbus Romeo Bravo uniform. Generic Tango Delta Mike traffic is 10 o'clock 4 miles at 10,000 feet generic. Report them in sight. Generic Delta Golf Victor traffic is 12 o'clock 4 miles at 9,000 feet generic. Report them in sight. Generic Tango Delta Mike have the generic in sight. Generic Delta Golf Victor have the generic in sight.
This is kind of a wave of red lights here and there in the sea. Land is on the right side, you can see.
Generic Papa Tango Zulu descend and maintain 10,000 feet. Descend and maintain 10,000 feet generic Papa Tango Zulu. Cessna November Lima Sierra traffic is 4 o'clock 4 miles at 8,500 feet Cessna Skyhawk. Report them in sight. Generic Tango Uniform Bravo climb and maintain flight level 290. London Center Generic Golf.
So you see now,
Quebec Hotel
plane
Alpha
is
Lima
barely
6,000
visible outside.
Generic Golf. Quebec Hotel Alpha Lima London Center continue as planned. Altimeter
If it was
29.92.
moon, I wonder how would it reflect on the sea and how would it affect the brightness of the environment. I wonder if there's a setting to adjust moonlight just like we can do the sunlight by changing in whether the daytime or the nighttime.
London Center Generic Golf. Uniform Hotel Mike 4,500 feet. Generic Golf. Uniform Hotel Mike London Center continue as planned. Altimeter 29.92.
So you can see still that is the part of the city that is visible on the right side, so it's quite wonderful. It's not that far and it's actually you can see it, so it's not I was expecting the pitch black as it's on the left side, so there is still some light on the right side.
Generic Hotel Alpha Lima, you are 69 miles southeast. Descend and maintain.
So I wonder how would it,
Expect ILS runway 22
feel like when you are
transition.
completely flying above the sea and there's no city around. I just find such a flight plan. I'll see. I'll just let you know.
Charlie Yankee 7,500 feet. Generic Tango Uniform Bravo contact Brussels Center on 125.0. Cessna Delta Alpha Echo Charlie Yankee London Center continue as planned. Altimeter 29.92. Going to 125.0 Generic Tango Uniform Bravo.
see, AI will do it for me.
125.0 for Pia 125. Brussels Center Pia 125 flight level 230.
Pia 125 Brussels Center, continue to Rapix as planned.
So that's the advantage of leaving the AI, leaving the communication with ATC on AI. You know, it's important to respond to them, otherwise after a while if you do not respond they'll cancel your flight plan. So if you leave it on AI, and Microsoft probably knew it, you know, it would be boring for people to keep clicking to just respond to ATC, so they've given the option of an AI, so AI is managing it on its own. So whenever you want to take it manually, you know, you can do it anytime, but it's best to be left. I just find it useful to leave the AI off during while I'm, you know, starting up the plane and taxiing up until the runway, that yellow ribbon before the takeoff. That's when I turn on the ATC to AI, and I just leave it like that even after landing, because soon after you have landed, ATC automatically tells you to move towards the parking gate.
Generic Alfa Romeo Hotel have the generic inside. Generic 276, you are 400 feet above your assigned altitude. Descend and maintain 13,000 feet, altimeter 29.902. Generic Alfa Romeo Hotel, contact London Center on 118.475. Generic Tango Uniform Bravo, you are 300 feet below your assigned altitude. Climb and maintain flight level 290. Brussels Center says to go. Uniform Zulu Victor Juliet 9,000 feet.
So we are getting closer to city lights and we are about to pass the C part of our flight. So I'm wondering, those lights, you know, there could be a way to reflect those planes movement on this map. You know, so there are some flights moving on here and there. I think it's there in X-Plane 11. I haven't played it much, but it would be nice to have this feature built in without any plugin, built in and right inside the Microsoft Flight Simulator. You see it's pitch black, you can't see your plane outside, and we are getting closer to city lights. I'm loving those lights. I hope that my plane gets bright enough.
Brussels Center, generic Delta, Alpha Quebec Tango Hotel 6,500 feet. Generic Tango Uniform Bravo, please expedite your descent to flight level 290. Generic Delta, Alpha Quebec Tango Hotel Brussels Center, continue as planned. Altimeter 29.902. Generic 276, you are 400 feet above your assigned altitude.
See those
Descend and maintain 13,000 feet,
lights in the sky. Those are the planes, and I don't see a way that they are indicated. I'm not sure about those circles, the blue ones and the orange ones, but I don't think those are the flights. It should be, you know, mentioned by the airplane icon as like our flight. I hope Microsoft will add this feature sometime. Rather, I should put it in the discussion on their forum. I'll create a post, I'll see, you know, and you guys do check out. I'll let you know on my Facebook page, and also move on there and you know, support. So I'll post a thread when I post it, as I post it, so you also go there and support it so that we get that feature added.
Generic Quebec Tango
Not that it makes any difference, but just it adds to realism, I guess, you know.
Uniform contact approach on 127.33. Generic Tango Uniform Bravo, you are 500 feet below your assigned altitude. Climb and maintain flight level 290. Generic Papa Uniform Quebec contact Amsterdam Center on 119.175. Generic Zulu Delta Delta contact London Center on 118.475. Cessna Uniform Alpha Kilo contact approach on 127.33. Cessna Zulu Juliet Zulu contact Amsterdam Center on 119.175. Descend and maintain flight level 290. Generic Tango Uniform Bravo.
So the beautiful city lights have come again. So I'm just checking out how bright my plane is getting, but I guess I'll have to wait for a while and stay inside cockpit for now and enjoy the view from inside.
Generic Tango Uniform Bravo, please expedite your descent to flight level 290. Generic Zulu Kilo November. Brussels Center Cessna Delta, Alpha Zulu Juliet Zulu 5,500 feet. Cessna Delta, Alpha Zulu Juliet Zulu Brussels Center continue as planned. Altimeter 290.92. Generic Tango Uniform Bravo, please expedite your descent to flight level 290. Brussels Center Cessna Delta, Alpha Zulu Juliet Zulu. Request clearance to transition Charlie airspace. Cessna Delta, Alpha Zulu Juliet Zulu Brussels Center. Cleared through the Charlie airspace. Cleared through Charlie airspace, Cessna Zulu Juliet Zulu. Generic 276, you are 300 feet above your assigned altitude. Descend and maintain 13,000 feet, altimeter 290.92. Cessna Echo Uniform Alpha contact approach on 120.6. Descend and maintain 13,000 feet, generic 276.
This is where we have reached.
You are 500 feet below your
We are getting
assigned altitude.
closer to our destination airport, and we are quite close now to get through waypoints and where we have to start our descent.
Uniform 7,500 feet. Cessna Delta, Alpha Romeo Golf Uniform Brussels Center continue as planned. Altimeter 290.92. Climb and maintain flight level 290. Generic Tango Uniform Bravo.
There's some improvement, and I can see because earlier while we were still during the climb phase, the altitude was slightly lower, so the lights of the city were reflecting on better so on our plane's surface. So right now our altitude is 23,000 feet, so the reason for darkness. It feels like I'm getting obsessed with being able to see my plane from outside during a flight.
Generic Tango Uniform Bravo, you are 800 feet above your assigned altitude. Descend and maintain flight level 290. Descend and maintain flight level 290, Generic Tango Uniform Bravo. Generic Tango Uniform Bravo, traffic is 11 o'clock 3 miles at flight level 280, Generic. Report them inside. Generic 276, you are 300 feet above your assigned altitude. Descend and maintain 13,000 feet, altimeter 290.92. Generic Romeo Romeo Hotel, traffic is 6 o'clock 1 mile at flight level 300, Generic. Report them inside. Generic Tango Uniform Bravo, have the traffic.
We are now getting closer to even the more brighter parts of the city. I guess we're getting closer to the centers of the city, so it's densely packed with population, so there are more lights. The representation of wing maps during nighttime, the in-flight simulator, is spectacular, as close to the reality as it could be, and I think nothing can beat that. Instead of spending on add-ons, you just need a good internet connection. You're good to go.
Generic Foxtrot Romeo Echo. Generic Tango Uniform Bravo, you are 500 feet below your assigned altitude. Climb and maintain flight level 290. Generic Zulu Quebec Mike, descend and maintain 15,000 feet. Russell Center landmark 58904 is at flight level 200, climbing flight level 230. Climb and maintain flight level 290, Generic Tango Uniform Bravo. Descend and maintain 15,000 feet, Generic Zulu Quebec Mike. Generic 276, you are 400 feet above your assigned altitude. Descend and maintain 13,000 feet, altimeter 290.92.
Descend and maintain 13,000 feet, generic 276.
Generic Tango Uniform Bravo, you are 700 feet above your assigned altitude. Descend and maintain flight level 290. Descend and maintain flight level 290, Generic Tango Uniform Bravo.
So let me show you by zooming out the flight path, and I think the runway is approximately within 180 nautical miles, something like that. The airport, or arrival airport. Quite a view from the cockpit.
Climb and maintain flight level 290.
Descend and maintain 13,000 feet, generic 276.
Descend and maintain 12,000 feet, generic Mike Bravo Sierra. Russell Center Cessna Golf. Zulu Tango Golf Kilo 4,500 feet. Generic Zulu Whiskey Hotel traffic in sight. Generic Tango Uniform Bravo, you are 600 feet above your assigned altitude. Descend and maintain flight level 290. Russell Center Cessna Golf. Zulu Tango Golf Kilo. Request clearance to transition Charlie airspace. Cleared through Charlie airspace, Cessna Tango Golf Kilo. Cessna Tango Golf Kilo have the generic inside. Cessna Tango Golf Kilo traffic is 4 o'clock, 4 miles at 8,500 feet, Cessna Skyhawk. Report them inside. Descend and maintain flight level 290, generic Tango Uniform Bravo. Generic 276, you are 400 feet above your assigned altitude. Descend and maintain 13,000 feet, altimeter 29.92. Landmark 589 climb and maintain flight level 310. Generic Mike Bravo Sierra, you are 400 feet above your assigned altitude. Descend and maintain 12,000 feet, altimeter 29.92.
Descend and maintain 13,000 feet, generic 276.
Climb and maintain flight level 310, landmark 589 Landmark 4734, climb and maintain flight level 330. Climb and maintain flight level 330, landmark 4734.
So we are now very close to the waypoint, and we have to start our descent. quite a view there. So we are making slight left turn to adjust our flight path for the next waypoint, and we are nearing the gap zone and we have to start our descent. There you go, capsule approximately 19 nautical miles. 20 nautical miles before we start our descent. We are almost there. let's now set up our altitude to 4,000 feet. Engage selected mode, and let's set up our descent rate to around 1,000 feet per minute for now as a start, and then we'll see how we are progressing, and we'll be changing our descent rate accordingly.
Landmark 6544 contact center on
You can hear the
127.6.
engines slowing down to compensate for
Generic November Delta Mike contact
our descent rate
119.175.
and maintain the speed of the aircraft.
127.6 for landmark 6544.
PIA 125 contact center on 127.6.
127.6 for PIA 125. Center PIA 125 is at flight level 220, climbing flight level 230.
PIA 125 center continue as planned. Generic uniform Victor Sierra traffic is 1 o'clock 4 miles.
I'm such a big fan of flight simulation, right from flying the plane to those plane sounds, you know, speeding up, slowing down. Currently I'm just, in addition to other things, I'm just trying to focus on this engine sounds, and I'm looking at the descent rate and the distance from our next waypoint. I'm thinking of increasing the vertical speed of the aircraft. It's currently, I think it's slightly lower. The distance is around 74 nautical miles. It's quite reasonable, but I'm just keeping an eye on the speed, vertical speed, the descent rate, because it's better to get to our desired altitude before reaching that waypoint rather than overshooting the waypoint and then compensating for it via steep descent rate. It's all about planning ahead of time, keeping all these things in mind. So we see there's quite some distance, and our descent rate seems we're doing okay for now. I'll keep an eye and I'll adjust accordingly.
Center Cessna Foxtrot. Foxtrot Zulu Victor Alpha 5,500 feet.
Cessna Foxtrot. Foxtrot Zulu Victor Alpha Center continue as planned. Altimeter 29.902. Cessna Zulu Victor Alpha contact approach on 124.9. 125.0 generic uniform Alpha Mike. Going to 124.9 Cessna Zulu Victor Alpha. Landmark 170 tree contact Langen Center on
So let's increase the descent rate, because I think we need to descend down slightly faster, and we have a great deal of margin from 2,500 3,000 feet per minute, so we are only at 1,300. I just don't want to undershoot
Center generic golf.
the target
Charlie Papa
altitude
uniform Mike.
from our desired waypoint.
Transition Charlie airspace.
I'll just keep adjusting it.
Charlie Papa Uniform Mike Center. Cleared through the Charlie airspace.
Cleared through Charlie airspace. Generic Papa uniform Mike.
and that is quite an unexpected move from ATC. So they're telling us to descend to 5,000 feet. So up until now, before the recent update from the simulation from the Microsoft and the Soho Studio, I've seen that, you know, right until you are about 15, 20 or 30 nautical miles from the airport, they keep telling you to remain at your cruise altitude. And then suddenly when you are about 10 or 15, 30 miles from your arrival airport, they just, you know, want you to descend down to 5,000 feet. But this time they've done I think they've fixed the issue. So the ATC would keep telling you to, you know, climb up despite the fact that you have to descend. You have to start your descent. So this time I think they have fixed it. But they are telling us to descend to 5,000, but we'll keep descending, and we'll reach 4,000 feet. We'll see what the ATC tells us. Now that I know that they've fixed it, that's a good, you know, it's a sign of keeping your product on a road to improvement. The reason for that is to listen to those engine sounds more closely, yes, and I just can't resist it. You see, we are currently at the altitude, and the pilot is doing its thing to bring us down. So we are approximately about to reach our target waypoint, and the descent rate seems quite decent. We hope to be at our desired altitude of 4,000.
Generic Tango Uniform Bravo, you are 800 feet above your assigned altitude.
I just realized that I should, you know, be reaching to our desired altitude just before reaching rather than overshooting it. So it's better to be there before time instead of, you know, getting late and then, like I said earlier, you know, descending steeply.
Pia 125 approach, continue to Mike Tango Romeo as planned. Altimeter 29.92.
So Mike Tango Romeo, that's our transition waypoint. We're getting closer. And as we get closer to MTR, I'll be turning on the landing system information to see the glide slope and localizer. So we'll be seeing the localizer here and the glide slope information, the diamonds, to guide us for the ILS landing, and we expect them to be appearing soon as we get closer to our waypoint. So then I'll be turning on the approach button as the diamonds hit those center yellow lines, and that will help our plane descend for the landing on our desired runway. So I'm now reducing the airspeed to 250. In fact, I should have done it earlier as soon as I got below 10,000 feet. So it's a standard practice to keep our speed below 250 knots at an altitude of 10,000 or below. And we need to turn on our landing lights. So these are two things we need to keep in mind, the speed below 250 knots and turning the landing lights on. You have this opportunity to learn how to fly a plane in this simulation. It's not just a game, it's a simulation. So you learn. I've also learned these things by doing it. I'm by no means a pilot or have no training of such sort and flying. So we are at a decent rate, and we won't be missing our waypoint and the target altitude. So you can see your plane outside. Soon we'll be making our turn to the right, and we are about to reach our target waypoint, and our speed is still higher because we are continuing to descend. So I hope when we level off, the speed will also be getting closer to our target speed that we have set up, and it's getting closer. Leveling off at 4,000 feet. And soon I'll be turning on the landing system information to see the status of the glide slope and localizer. So let's turn on, and you can see the localizer diamond must be getting closer to the center line soon as we align with the runway. So we are being told for 5,000, but I won't be going above because I've noticed that at 4,000 feet we are able to capture the localizer if the altitude is different. So there you see we are getting closer, and soon we'll be making our turn to the right. So I'll be slowing down further, and I'll be adding flaps to slow us down and improve the control of the plane. So that's what ATC does if you're not following its instructions. We are at 4,000, it wants us to go to 5,000, but I won't be going to the 5,000 because I don't want to risk missing capturing the glide slope. So let's slow down further. We are getting closer to making our first turn for our arrival airport. And I want to add flaps now. Just when we'll be starting to make our turn, I'll be adding the flaps. So there we go. first turn. Speed is 220 knots. It's a decent speed to make that turn without overshooting our flight path. I'm enjoying those engine sounds as well. So that's the speed for adding your flaps 1 and 2 and 3 from the full flaps. The speed limits you should be aware of, you know. So let's add flaps 1. So flaps not only help planes slow down, but they also, by slowing down, improve the control of the plane. So let's lower the speeds further. Soon we are to make our final turn towards our rival airport, Frankfurt. We are already at 4,000 feet.
Descend and maintain 4,000 feet PA125.
So she said climb and maintain 4,000.
Cessna Kilo Romeo uniform contact approach on 130.5.
So this is our final right turn. And I hope you are enjoying the city lights.
130.5 for Cessna Kilo Romeo uniform.
So the glide slope has appeared and I have turned on the approach button. So let's now start slowing down further. I wish the knobs worked slightly better because they have to press a lot. So let's add flaps further. These knobs, speed knobs, are particularly sluggish to respond at times, and you see the localizer has been captured, and currently we are on altitude, and as soon as the localizer diamond, the glide slope diamond touches the mid yellow line, center yellow line, the localizer would turn green and we would start descending on our localizer.
Tower on 119.905
So we are
PA125.
continuing to
Frankfurt Tower
line up with the runway.
14
You can see the diamond on localizer is still towards the left.
Approach.
We are still more towards the right of the runway, so we need to align.
Runway 25 center approach.
Slowing down the speed at 140 knots.
Generic Foxtrot Whiskey Victor, you are leaving my
Let's
airspace.
add
Frequency
now.
change approved.
Frankfurt
More
Tower
flaps.
PA125 inbound ILS runway 25 center approach.
And then approach button is on, so let's prepare our plane for landing. Add the max auto brakes, and the speed brakes are already armed. And now let's add final flaps.
Cleared ILS runway 25 center
Let's
approach
turn the speed
PA125.
to 140, and I've added full flaps now, and it's about time to lower the landing gear. So let's turn on the landing information, and we see we are still lining up with the runway. Slight movement, it's almost in the center, the diamond for the localizer and the glide slope. And we are continuing to descend on our glide slope at a decent rate. Let's now set our final landing speed to 130 knots.
2,500.
glide slope are captured. Category 3 ILS landing, and this should turn, both these should be replaced by land when we are very close to the runway, so this can help us land automatically without disengaging the autopilot. So although the work on this by Flybywire team is still going on, and I'm not sure if it will work, the auto landing, so I'm still not sure about it because they still haven't released this, but the display of glide slope and localizer would change to land if the plane is able to land automatically. So let's keep descending. So that's what happens if you do not respond to ATC. That's still being done by autopilot.
PIA 125 cleared to land runway 25
Cleared to land.
Wind
Runway 25 center.
Cleared to land runway 25 center PIA 125.
So both the diamonds are lined up pretty well with the runway. And this now should be replaced by the land. Keep an eye for landward, and if that happens, that means plane can land automatically. But still I'm unsure if the system has been, because the Flybywire team hasn't released that version of the Flybywire mod where the auto landing is possible. You might have seen some videos on YouTube where they've shown how the auto landing works in different weather conditions, different wind conditions. So I'm assuming this isn't yet fully developed and integrated in this version that I'm using, the Flybywire version of 0.52. So anytime land should appear here. So there, that means now plane can land automatically. So I'll continue with auto landing. I could have disengaged pilot, but we'll continue. Still unsure how this will respond. Don't forget to enjoy the show of lights in night landing. So not quite expected, that was quite a bumpy landing. Leaving it on autopilot was quite a mistake, and I just realized I should have done a manual landing and disengaged the autopilot while 100 feet above the runway. So we'll have to wait for the auto landing feature to work, and we'll wait for Flybywire team to release that version of the A320neo mod. And let's now head towards our parking gate, and that's the advantage of leaving the ATC on AI and the taxi ribbon on. So both these assist you in ensuring that you get a information on your gate for where you have to park your plane. And let's turn all the flaps up. So currently the throttle is idle and we are moving, and we're applying brakes to avoid overshooting. So I've just engaged the parking brakes. Wanted to show you that as soon as you land you need to turn your APU on. So what it does is it enables you to park your plane while your APU would become available, and you can then switch off your engines while your displays would still be on, because the APU would be running. So before reaching your park, as soon as you land, you know, just turn your APU on. Otherwise, if you're parked at your gate
Frankfurt
and
Tower, Airbus Delta.
you
Delta
turn off your
Whiskey
engines, your
Foxtrot
displays
Hotel
would
at
go off
runway
because there would be no
25
power
center, ready for
virtually.
takeoff IFR to Carthage.
So that, I mean, that's the real world
Delta. Alpha Whiskey Foxtrot
situation
Hotel,
that you have to
hold short
face.
runway 25 center.
So we are trying to
Traffic is Airbus A320
imitate that
on the
situation.
runway.
Hold short runway 25 center, Airbus Whiskey Foxtrot Hotel.
Slow down slightly. So here we are. So APU has started. I think that's the sound of APU. Just in time when we are about to get parked at our gate. So just trying to control the speed of the aircraft by applying brakes. So we are almost there. Almost reached. So engaging parking brakes, and now because your APU is on, you can now turn off the engines. So you can also turn on the external power that will keep supporting your APU. Now what this enables you, because you have the external power on, so you can turn on your engines. And I should have moved that selector mode to the center right after starting the engine, so I just forgot about it. This is your flight summary, so let's continue. I wanted to explain a little few things for you. So your engines are turning down. You have to switch them off, and now you can even turn off your APU because the external power is on. Turn off the APU bleed as well, and we can turn off our fuel pumps. We don't need any of those. So it's basically the reverse of when we were starting the plane. Our batteries are on, and we can now turn off the external power. You can see the display is still running. As soon as we turn off the external power, all these things will go off. So there. So I hope you had fun during this flight, and you learned a few things. If you have any suggestions, if you for improvement, if you want any specific tutorials, if you have any questions, you can write down the comments. You can post me a message in the inbox, so I'll be looking out for those. So I have turned off the batteries, and in a while everything will be going pitch black. So those are the final sounds of engines and APUs going down, and we can turn off all those landing lights and wing lights and strobe lights, and everything, but the plane will go down anyway because the batteries have been turned off, so it takes a couple of minutes. So that's it. So you have your headlight back. So I hope you had fun, and I enjoyed a lot. This was my first nighttime flight, and it was fun. Yeah. And Microsoft team has done a wonderful job. The Asobo team has done a wonderful job by creating this flight simulation for people like us who are not pilots, but they have the joy of being a pilot. So see you in the next video. Bye bye.